Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. As always, I'm Bryson Carver. It is great to have y'all in on this Friday afternoon. The weekend is upon us, and we got some college football next week. I'll talk a little bit more about that. We got a great show for you today. Charles Barkley and Kevin Durant, man. I'm surprised Katie hasn't responded yet. If he has, please let me know. I don't know if he's said anything on Twitter yet, but Charles Barkley once again going at Kevin Durant. And once again, I do think that Chuck has there's a little bit of validity, to say the very least, about what he said about Katie recently. I'll talk about that, as well as why I don't think it's a good idea for the Lakers to send Russell Westbrook home. I have another solution that I'll get to later in the show, as well as I think it's time for the Steelers to have a come to Jesus moment. I think it's time to start Kenny Pickett week 1. I really believe that. I'll discuss that, as well as why the Rams-Bengals pretty massive brawl is not going to have the consequences that many people are suggesting, in part because of NFL rules. I'll get into that later in the show. But first, so you guys know I was really, or at least longtime listeners of the show know that I was pretty high on Tua Tagovailoa out of Alabama coming out of the draft in 2020. I said of the 3 quarterbacks that were being talked about the most, Burrow, Tua, and Herbert, I felt like if all 3 hit their ceiling, that Tua would have the best career, because you're talking about accuracy, leadership. At the time at Alabama, I thought he was pretty good moving in and out of the pocket. But I thought Justin Herbert would end up being the best quarterback because of Tua's injuries and because I thought Burrow was going to a horrendous situation in Cincinnati. Well, at the time, Burrow did go to a horrendous situation in Cincinnati, and somehow, some way, because he's Joe Burrow, I guess, 2 years in, he takes them to the Super Bowl despite having probably the worst offensive line in the league. Justin Herbert, despite having never been to the playoffs, has been remarkable. You could still make the argument, that Justin Herbert is the best of the 3 quarterbacks. Certainly he's better than Tua, and you can even make the argument he's better than Burrow. I think he's that talented. But I was very high on Tua coming out of the draft in Alabama in 2020. Rookie year, it's fine. Had his moments. Didn't love what I saw. But, he has some, good moments. He had a big road win at Arizona. He ran for a big first down in that game. He played well, right? And then he had a game in 2021, he played well against the Patriots in that last game of the season. He showed flashes. But as I've always used the Bill Parcells saying when it comes to evaluating quarterbacks, and I think you can actually apply it to coaches as well, is that year 1, you just want to see some development. There's going to be some crappy games in there. It is what it is. Okay, all rookie quarterbacks, I really can't think of one that have not had an awful game, at least one awful game their first year. Okay, it happens, man. You're a rookie. But year 2, you want to see a significant jump from year 1. And if by year 3, you're still asking yourself questions about whether or not he's a franchise quarterback or not, you cut bait. And in year 3, we're seeing some of the stuff. Well, we have eyes. We're seeing some of the stuff at training camp in Miami with Tua, despite the Dolphins trading for Tyreek Hill, despite adding Cedric Wilson in free agency, despite bringing back Mike Gesicki and bringing in Mostert in free agency, right? Despite bringing in an elite left tackle, despite having Jalen Waddle for a second consecutive season after having 1,000 receiving yards a year ago. But man, I'll tell you what, these Miami Dolphins know how to hype a quarterback, if you know what I mean. So let's start first with Mike McDaniel, who was talking about Tua Tagovailoa and how he's what he sees in him as a quarterback. Mike McDaniel, head coach of the Dolphins, said, quote, "When I first got here, when I first met him and took in his personality, this was a guy that was very guarded with scars. This offseason, Tua had a foundation event. This guy that was quiet, you could tell that he was trying to please. He jumps on stage with some bongos in the background and is dancing with this glow, chest out, with a confidence, a bravado that was magnetic." And I was like, that's it. That's the spirit of that athlete, that if we can bring that out on the field, that's how you can play the quarterback position the best way. Okay. So because he's, I guess, showing a little bit more emotion, and hey, listen, man, to each their own. If you're an introvert, if you're an extrovert, that's fine. That's how you're wired. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're saying if that's what you want to bring out more, say if Tua had some leadership questions, say if it was like a Kyler Murray type of thing. If Tua had some of Kyler, some of the questions around him that surround Kyler about, doesn't get along great with teammates, kind of ghosts people, okay, then this would be a valid. This has absolutely nothing to do with playing the quarterback position. Absolutely nothing. Bravado. I mean, again, I'm not hearing anything in regards to arm strength. Okay. I'm not hearing anything in regards to moving in and out of the pocket. I'm not hearing anything even as in terms of him getting better, in terms of improvement. We're hearing a lot of nothing but intangibles about Tua. And don't get me wrong, you guys know how much I care about intangibles. I've always said that's the biggest hole in Aaron Rodgers. So for a guy like, say, like a Tim Tebow, intangibles is the only reason that he survived as long as he did, which was only, basically 2 years in the NFL as a starting quarterback, because he could not throw. Okay. Whereas Rodgers, the opposite. He has just about every single gift you could ask for in a quarterback, except his leadership intangibles are about as bad as it could possibly be. Maybe a little better than Jay Cutler. But if you talk about the Los Angeles Chargers, okay, the one thing that Justin Herbert and Tua Tagovailoa have in common, never been to the playoffs. 2 years in, they've never been to the playoffs. Another thing they actually have in common is that in both of their rookie years, they had bad offensive lines. Now, in fairness to Tua, his offensive line didn't get a whole lot better in 2021. Herbert's did. But both have excellent weapons. Both have a coach, which in fairness to Mike McDaniel, he hasn't coached a game yet. So we'll see. Maybe he could prove me wrong, but I wasn't high on the hire when they fired Flores in favor of Mike McDaniel weeks later. Okay. But there's questions at the head coach. We have some questions, a few questions about Brandon Staley, maybe being a little too aggressive on fourth down in some of those games, costing the Chargers in some late game situations. Okay. They play in divisions with elite quarterback play, right? Tua plays in the division with Josh Allen. Justin Herbert plays in the division with 3 elite quarterbacks, Mahomes, Wilson, and Carr. There's some similarities there. Heck, Tua was the 5th pick. Herbert was the 6th pick. Difference is, have you heard one guy out of Los Angeles Chargers can't talk about, man, there's just a mojo about Justin Herbert, I mean, you guys wait. You got to see this guy. I mean, you just wait. You're seeing the improvement. We're seeing it. It's a day by day. No, he's incredible. We saw the first freaking game this guy played, we were like, holy cow, this guy's good. Remember Tyrod Taylor? Technically, it's Tyrod Taylor. Remember, he played that first game when they beat the Cincinnati Bengals on the road. And then before a home game against the defending champs, Kansas City Chiefs, Tyrod Taylor has a medical emergency. I think it was like a punctured lung or something. It was something that was pretty serious, right? That it was a mistake by the doctors. And so at the time, the head coach, Anthony Lynn, told Justin Herbert, like, hey, kid, like, you're up. Tyrod Taylor can't play. You're going to have to start. And he was unbelievable. En route to having a Rookie of the Year season, winning Offensive Rookie of the Year, and then 2 years in, breaking multiple quarterback records for their first 2 years. I mean, passing yards, passing touchdowns. He's unbelievable. He can move. He's big. He's strong. He's a great leader. He's everything you want in a quarterback. The Chargers are not having to convince you, like, wait, you wait till you see this Herbert kid. You just wait. I mean, Green Bay's still doing it with Jordan Love. The Packers are like, you just got to wait. So, Jordan Love, he's coming along. It's like, man, we haven't seen it. We're 3 years in. I haven't seen any significant improvement from Jordan Love from year 1 to now. Like, he's not a franchise quarterback. I'm sorry. It's a good thing you still have Aaron Rodgers. In the case of Tua, sorry, I haven't seen it. I mean, Mike McDaniel, the head coach, said the other day, like, man, Tua throws the most accurate, most catchable ball you've ever seen. Yeah, I hope so. The majority of the great quarterbacks are pretty accurate. Mahomes accurate, Allen's accurate, Burrow's accurate, Brady's accurate, Rodgers accurate, Dak's accurate, Carr's accurate, Wilson's accurate, Herbert's accurate. Yeah, I hope so. If you're not, that's a big problem. That was the biggest concern for Josh Allen coming in. Remember, Josh Allen was completing like 52% of his passes. It was like not good. That was what Cam Newton dealt with his whole career. Cam Newton was never an accurate quarterback. Like, that's sort of like the bare minimum that we want, is for you to deliver the ball on time, on target to your receivers. Again, I need a little more than that. So I'm not sold on Tua. Do I think the Dolphins can make the playoffs? Yes, I do. Because I thought they got better in the offseason in terms of their roster. I thought they downgraded at head coach. I thought Brian Flores got about as screwed over as any coach has been in a long time. And I don't think Mike McDaniel is exactly the greatest. If you want to call him an upgrade from Flores, I don't think he is. But if you want to call him that, fine. I mean, this is an organization that has not gotten their act together since the retirement of Dan Marino 2 decades ago. So I'm not sold on Tua. I get the moves that they made around him, but if you don't have the quarterback to get those guys, those incredibly talented skill position players, on time, on target, consistently, being able to compete, there's only so far you can go. There's a hard ceiling. It's a you can get a concussion as hard as the ceiling is for the Miami Dolphins. At the absolute best, they're a 10-win team. And 10 wins probably gets you in the playoffs. Probably. Given the fact that the AFC West teams will probably beat up on each other because they're also elite. But no, I'm not sold on the Tua hype whatsoever. Getting to the comments today. Grady Edwards, my man, back in the comments. We were just talking about Patrick Beverley, which I'll talk about later with the whole Russell Westbrook situation. Grady said, I listened to an interesting take from Colin Cowherd today. People saying don't get ahead of yourself on Pickett, and we don't read too much into Jordan Love struggling are incorrect because you either have it or you don't. I fall in the middle of that. What do you think of the statement by Cowherd, and how would you feel about the future of those two quarterbacks? Well, I'm going to talk about Kenny Pickett a little later in the show, Grady. But like I said, and like I mentioned about Jordan Love, again, we're 3 years in. I don't see it. Do I think you can make consistent? Do I think you can improve consistently in the offseason? Yeah, because I saw it. Josh Allen is the model of that. I think Dak Prescott is the model of that. Ever since Dak's kind of down year, his second year in the NFL, look at his numbers, look at the win. He's gotten better and better and better every year. Guys, believe it or not, professional athletes can get better at their sport that they put hours and hours a day into. But I have not seen. Do I think Tua can be at his peak a starting NFL quarterback? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I don't think he's like a backup quarterback today, right? I think he's better than a Jacoby Brissett. But if you're asking me, do I think he's going to live up to the Dolphins selecting him with the 5th overall pick? I don't. I'm sorry, I've not seen it. Given what Burrow has given Cincinnati, given what Herbert has given the Chargers, I mean, as unfair as it is, possibly, you're going to be compared to the guys you were drafted with, the guys in your draft class at your position. I mean, they made a documentary 10 years ago called The Brady Six, the 6 quarterbacks that were taken over Tom Brady. They made a whole 1-hour documentary, might have been an hour and a half documentary about that. Like those quarterbacks, the best among them was like Chad Pennington, right? Who we know never panned out. A lot of that was due to injury. For the rest of their careers, for the rest of their, all time that we think about these guys as NFL quarterbacks, the first thing we're going to think of is, wow, they were drafted ahead of Tom Brady. The heck were these teams thinking, right? Like that's how we're going to think of it. And we're always going to remember the Dolphins for taking Tua over Herbert. Because I'm sorry. I have eyes. You have eyes. We watch the games. The gap between Herbert and Tua is incredible. Tua had a crappy offensive line and was fine. Had some bad games. That's a pretty good game. He's fine. Herbert had a terrible offensive line and won Rookie of the Year. And we were like, good Lord, this kid's amazing. There's levels to this. So I'm sorry. To me, if you have to continue, unless you're a rookie quarterback and we haven't seen you play in the NFL yet, if you're a guy who's 3 years or more in and we keep hearing, man, you just got to watch this kid. He's gonna, man, we're 3 years. I still haven't seen it. Okay. I'm sorry. And especially Miami. I get into his defense. Miami isn't exactly the model of a great football operation. Haven't been for a long time. But at the very least, to the Dolphins' credit, Chris Greer, the general manager, they have stacked the offense for Tua. Stacked it. Add an elite coach, an elite quarterback, this is a Super Bowl contender, even in a division with the Buffalo Bills. But as I always say, it's quarterback's league. I mean, you had Tyreek Hill. I'm trying to find Tyreek's comment that he said about Tua. Not able to do that as of yet, but let's see. Yeah, here it is. Tyreek was, he called Tua the most accurate quarterback in the NFL. And Tyreek Hill played with Patrick Mahomes. I don't get, listen, the Patrick Mahomes sort of disrespect this offseason has been a little nuts. The fact that people are like, oh man, he's fallen off a cliff, man. I mean, how old is Patrick Mahomes? 27 years old. He's like he's just now going into his prime. I mean, last year, what did he throw? 37 touchdowns. People called it a down year. For Mahomes, it was a down year. But that's how great that this guy is. I still think he's the second best quarterback in football, right? At his best, he's the best quarterback in football. Okay, Mahomes, you saw the first game that man played, at least in 2018, because he started a game in 2017 for Alex Smith. But in 2018, first game he played for the Chiefs, we were like, oh my God, this kid. Oh my. I mean, they were talking MVP after Patrick Mahomes' first game. And people say, Josh Allen. Okay, he had a bad rookie year. But you saw the improvement in year 2. And in year 3, he was in the conversation for MVP. I have a hard time believing that Tua will be anywhere near that this season. I haven't seen it. I'm sorry. And I'm rooting for him, though. I mean, he's a good kid. Again, I don't dispute the whole intangibles thing about Tua at all. I think he is a tremendous leader. I mean, Nick Saban spoke highly of him. People within the Dolphins, we're talking about, man, he's a great leader in the locker room, loves it. That's great. Like, I have nothing to say about that. I mean, I love Tua. He's got a great family, just a good dude. But I'm telling you, man, I have not seen it 2 years in. But who knows? Maybe he'll prove me wrong. Maybe that year 3, which is usually, again, like I said, when we kind of know whether you're it or not, if you're a quarterback, we'll see. All right, moving to the NBA. Thankfully, once again, the Kevin Durant saga is over. As I said yesterday, I talked about that and how he's staying with the Brooklyn Nets. I'll try and get that clipped onto YouTube. But Charles Barkley and Kevin Durant, this back and forth, man, is something else. So obviously, remember a few months ago when Charles Barkley had the infamous bus driver comments about KD. Remember, he said, you got them 2 championships, but don't go around talking like I drove the bus, I drove the Warriors, I led the Warriors to a championship. He said, no, you were just amazing. Steph was the bus driver, and Draymond was sitting shotgun with Steph. So obviously, Draymond Green is not the player Kevin Durant is, not even close. But in terms of being the driving force, in terms of being the leader, yeah, Draymond was that guy. But Charles Barkley was saying something, talking in an interview with an Arizona radio station, and he was talking about Kevin Durant. He said, quote, he seems like a miserable person, man. I call him Mr. Miserable. He's never going to be happy. Everybody's given him everything on a silver platter. He was the man in Oklahoma City. They loved him. He owned the entire state. He bolts on them and wins back-to-back championships with Golden State, and he's still not happy. Then he goes to Brooklyn. They give him everything he wants, and he's still miserable. And this is something that I have talked about on this show. And I do think it is, and you don't want to ever go into a player's personal business in terms of how they're doing mentally, stuff like that. Like I'm always very, very sensitive about those types of things. Mental health is something, as y'all know, that I care very, very deeply about. But it is something that I think I have noticed in Kevin Durant. And I've said this since probably late in the season a year ago, like right after the playoffs. Like I don't think, and I agree with Chuck here, I don't think KD's that happy. And I always point back, I think the flashpoint moment was when he won the Finals MVP. He was the best player on the Warriors in 2017. Won Finals MVP, played extraordinary in that 5 games against the Cleveland Cavaliers when my Warriors won in 5 games. And about a month and a half after, we're hearing about the burner accounts, this and that. And KD said in an interview when they were asking about, man, what's it like to win a championship? And KD was candid. I mean, one thing I always give Kevin Durant, man, you don't have to wonder what is going on through his head. Like he tells you. And he said, this is it. Because he was reliant, and this isn't just a basketball thing, this is a life thing. He was reliant on, man, I've accomplished pretty much everything I can in the NBA except for winning a championship. I've won 4 scoring titles. I've won an MVP. I've had success in the playoffs. I've been to an NBA finals. Yeah, I've done everything. I haven't won a championship. And he says, okay, if I win this championship, then it'll make me happy. And so he went to Golden State, the team that obviously would give him the best chance to win a championship. And he did. Matter of fact, he won another one the year prior, or the following year. And it still didn't seem to satisfy him. Because I don't know if it's, again, I don't want to go too deep into this, but I don't know if it's something in Kevin's personal life. I don't know if it's, maybe a relationship that's not there. I don't know. But I think Chuck is getting at a pretty valid point here. Like, Brooklyn and OKC, well, maybe not OKC as much as Brooklyn. Certainly Brooklyn is the case. Brooklyn gave him everything. Golden State, as I talked about in yesterday's show, is, I think, by far the most player-friendly organization, and certainly in the NBA, might be in sports. You got a former player as your head coach, Steve Kerr, who is totally pro player. Okay, you've got the most unselfish superstar in sports in Steph Curry, a man who won back-to-back MVPs, went to back-to-back finals, and when the Warriors recruited Kevin Durant, he said, all right, hey, I'm giving you the keys now. And he did that. He had Steph Curry, who was more than willing to defer to Kevin Durant. He had guys like Klay Thompson, who going from the second option to the third option behind Steph and KD. Clay's like, I don't care. I just want to win championships. Now, is Draymond a pain in the behind sometimes? Yeah, absolutely is. But if that's your only issue, if Draymond Green is your only problem in Golden State, it's pretty good. It could be a lot worse, okay? Kevin should know. He was with Russell Westbrook for 8 years. It really could be worse. You could be with a franchise that doesn't attract free agents, Oklahoma City, okay? In Brooklyn, okay? They give him everything, as Charles Barkley points out. And he still doesn't seem, that happy. And I just think, Charles Barkley also said, if you go back and look at his career as the best player and being the leader and all that goes with that, he's been an abject failure. I don't know if I would go to abject failure because in KD's defense, he has won 2 championships. He has won 2 finals MVPs. In my view, I think he's probably the 14th or 15th greatest player of all time, given what he's accomplished and given how great of a basketball player that he is and how well his game has aged. So I don't know if I go to abject failure, but I would go to agreeing with Chuck. And again, something I said on yesterday's show, I'm not sure if, as a matter of fact, I'm pretty certain that if KD is, to use another Charles Barkley quote, the bus driver, if he is supposed to be the heartbeat and the driving force of a franchise that is trying to win a championship, he's Kawhi Leonard. In other words, that's not his MO. That's Steph's MO. It's LeBron's, Giannis's, like those guys, without a question. Okay, that was Tim Duncan's. That was Kobe Bryant's. That was Michael Jordan's, Magic Johnson's, Larry Bird's. Just keep going back. Obviously, the late, great Bill Russell is the ultimate example of that. I'm not sure that's where KD is. I mean, if you want to say that's the one hole in his game or in his career, that's not the worst hole to have. At least he does have the 2 championships now. But I just think that Chuck hits on some really important points here. That in Oklahoma City, he was the man. Listen, Russ was there. And Russ, I mean, let's not revise history. Russ was just as much the man, if not more the man in Oklahoma City, at least in the fans' eyes, and more importantly, in the organization's eyes, as KD was. But KD was still beloved in Oklahoma City. As Chuck said, he owned the state pretty much, or at least co-owned the state with Westbrook. But he got a little tired of how the organization kind of babied Westbrook. So he's like, okay, let me go to an organization, to use KD's own words, that plays basketball the right way. And as I just said, is the most player-friendly organization maybe in sports, along with, say, like the Los Angeles Rams. And he still wasn't happy. Even with 2 championships there, still wasn't happy. Goes to Brooklyn, where they cater up until his trade request, up until he asked out. catered to his every single demand. And he's still not satisfied. He still wanted out. I think it's some fair points by Chuck. Let's see. All right, great. Yeah, great is in the comments. He says, I agree 100%, but I think the flashpoint moment was when he left OKC. He ran from his problems instead of facing them and evolving, and he's been trying to justify that move for years. Dude, deep down might feel like a failure. What I read from it, that Oklahoma City team would have won if he had stayed. They traded for Sabonis and prime Oladipo and had prime Westbrook. That OKC team would have been would have won the title within 2 to 3 seasons had he stayed. Yeah, and I agree. And people forget too, Billy Donovan, who I think is a very underrated coach. He was a great college coach. I think he's been a very good NBA coach with the Thunder and now with the Chicago Bulls. Yeah, it's a good point, Grady, because they traded Serge Ibaka to get Oladipo. So you did give up a little bit of your interior defense. We know, in his prime, they called him Serge Ibaka because he was such a great shot blocker. And like you mentioned, the Sabonis trade, and we see what Sabonis has become. He's a 2-time All-Star, and they had Steven Adams. And, that was again, that Oklahoma City team had my Warriors, the 73-9 Warriors, down 3-1. And in games 3 and 4, smoked Golden State, smoked them, had them on the ropes. But Steph Curry did his thing in game 5. The Splash Brothers, in particular, Klay Thompson, game 6, Klay did his thing in game 6. And in game 7, Steph scored 36 and they won the game and they advanced. John says, can't satisfy every lady, LOL. And that's the thing. I mean, look, there's some people maybe you just can't satisfy. Maybe that's the issue. I don't know, but I just read that excerpt from Charles Barkley's interview, and I was like, I kind of agree with a lot of these points. That I do think there is something missing, and you could be right, Grady, about the flashpoint moment was leaving OKC and him trying to defend it. Maybe it's the fact that he has tried to defend it, because to me, count you can render what I'm about to say as irrelevant because I'm a Warriors fan. But I genuinely understand why he went to Golden State. And to make my point more valid, I have said numerous times on the show, and I will say it again. If in 2019, when Kevin Durant was a free agent, he wanted to leave Golden State and go to another well-run franchise, go to Boston, go to the Clippers, go to, I'm trying to think. Houston was good at the time, like a well-run franchise like that. I would have gotten it. I'm like, okay, you've accomplished. God's honest truth. When KD joined the Warriors in 2016, I'm thinking he'll be around for 2-3 years. I did not see that as a long-time relationship, and it wasn't. So if he wanted to leave, go elsewhere, go to another well-run franchise and try and go win a championship there, I'm like, I get it. He accomplished what he set out to accomplish in Golden State. He won 2 championships. He helped us win 2 championships, was the finals MVP twice, got no animosity towards KD. He did what he did. But he went to Brooklyn and he teamed up. Remember that summer, all the superstar free agents that were on the market. Kawhi Leonard was available. I don't think Jimmy Butler's a superstar, but he was available. Klay Thompson was a free agent that year, obviously came back to Golden State, right? You had Kemba Walker was a free agent. You had some big names that were on the market in free agency in 2019. And you chose Kyrie? That was the biggest head scratcher. To me, I'm sorry, that was a bigger head scratcher than KD leaving the Thunder to go to Golden State. Because that one was like, I don't see how he wins here. More power? Okay, but is that really what you want? Because with great power comes with great responsibility. And Katie has always said, hey, I just want to hoop. I'm a hooper. Well, hoopers usually don't, if just quote unquote hoopers, don't control the fate of every move that's made in the franchise. And in Brooklyn, he kind of has, along with Kyrie. And of all the superstars he could have chosen, you're Kevin Durant. Everybody wants to play with Kevin Durant. You choose him? You choose the weirdest, most unreliable star player in basketball? Because he's your friend? This isn't LeBron D. Wade. So, I mean, that one, when he made that move, I was like, dang, really? And then there were rumors about him, and Katie has said like he had never had any interest, and he very well may not have had interest. But there were remember all the Knicks rumors, like Katie's going to go to the Knicks. I'm like, he'd leave Golden State to go to the Knicks. Like that one would have been the ultimate. Like, what the heck are you doing? If Katie wanted to go to Miami, Pat Riley or Spoelstra, remember they did get Jimmy Butler that summer, deep roster, they draft well. Miami, you could argue more than any franchise outside of maybe Golden State takes guys. I mean, Miami had 2 undrafted guys in their starting rotation, or not in their starting rotation, but in their, rotation, guys come off the bench. Like Miami makes something out of nothing quite frequently. If you would have went to Miami, I get it. I would understand that. Brooklyn, that one was a head scratcher. John talking about that Oklahoma City team that KD left. He said that was one of the best teams to never win a championship. Yeah, it was. It was. I know. I remember Andre Iguodala was talking about a few years ago. Andre Iguodala, obviously 4-time champion with the Warriors, said that OKC team, he believes that OKC team would have beaten the Cavs in the 2016 finals. I don't think they would, but I think they would have pushed them 6 or 7 games. I mean, that year it felt like, man, LeBron is on a mission. Especially, once Golden State, and please don't remind me, this is probably my worst memory as a sports fan, as my Warriors going down 3-1, leading 3-1 over the Cavs and not coming away with the chip. But from games 5 through 7, like, Bron was on a mission. Okay, Bron was on a different level. 41, and then a triple-double, including the most iconic block in NBA history in Game 7. Like Bron was on a mission. Like I don't think Oklahoma City was going to beat them in 2016, but I agree, John. It certainly was one of the greatest teams to never get to the finals. I mean, we forget about that OKC team. Not to go too deep into this, but before they even played Golden State in that Western Conference Finals, they played the Spurs in the second round. Okay. The Spurs that year won 67 games. 67 games, 99% of the time, gets you the best record in the NBA. But because you had Golden State, who won 73 games, which was the all-time record, the Spurs were the 2 seed. So OKC, the 3 seed, played them in the second round. And OKC beat them. OKC beat the Spurs, the 67-win Spurs, and then had a 3-1 lead on the 73-win Warriors, including 2 games where they smoked my guys. So, yeah, it was certainly, without question, one of the best teams to never even get to the finals, much less win the championship. Let's see. Gray said, not that OKC team. As a LeBron fan, I was wanting OKC to beat Golden State because they didn't scare me 1 second. Yeah, well, I'll tell you this. So, Grady, being down, I remember watching that series in the basement of my family's previous house. I remember watching those games and that series, and like, especially that Game 6 was one of the most stressful games I've ever watched. Like that. But I do agree with you though, Grady. If OKC had gotten past Golden State, I don't think that they would have beaten Cleveland. To me, that have felt like Cleveland in 6. Just, my personal opinion, but we'll never know. All right, moving on. We just talked about Kevin Durant. It's only fitting we transition right to Russell Westbrook. So I talked about the Patrick Beverley trade yesterday and how I felt it was they made the move to get better. The Lakers got better with the Patrick Beverley trade, not significantly better. It's Patrick Beverley, but they didn't have to give up much to get, and they just gave up Taylor Horton Tucker and Stanley Johnson. That's not going to make or break your basketball team. But they had Patrick Beverley. And I felt like, A, it made them better. B, it gave them sort of the enforcer that they didn't have before. Because we know every great team, or every team that wants to be great, needs an enforcer. Okay. And 3, they are trying as hard as humanly possible to tick off Russell Westbrook and just, ship him off. Get him so, ticked off at the franchise to where he doesn't want to play for them anymore. Okay. But the report came out from The Athletic yesterday that said, quote, Beverley's arrival makes it more likely that Westbrook will be off the active roster by the start of training camp, either through a trade or the team sending him home, a la the Rockets with John Wall last season, according to a source close to the situation. I don't think that's the move to make. Obviously, we know Westbrook with the Lakers, shocker. It's been an absolute train wreck. I said on the show last year, it was as predictable as the sun coming up in the morning. Russell Westbrook and the Lakers was going to be a mess, and it was worse than even I thought it'd be. With that said, you don't want him, if you're sending him home, John Wall, Rockets, that's a different situation. Okay. John Wall's coming off another major injury. The Rockets are a bad team, a young team trying to develop, trying to get some of their young guys more playing time, see who's going to be a part of the franchise's long-term future or not. Like John Wall kind of would have just stood in the way of that. And so sort of a courtesy to a veteran, giving him the year off, be around the team. Yeah. Be a veteran mentor, but give him the year off, let him recover from the injury, and then just trade him or buy him out the next year. That was well played by the Houston Rockets. This is not that situation. While I do not believe that the Lakers are a championship contender whatsoever, I think it's going to be a fight for them just to get in the playoffs. I feel like they'll be the 7 or 8 seed. They're not a crappy team. You've got LeBron James. If nothing else, you've got LeBron James. If nothing else, you've got, hopefully, you're hoping 50 to 60 games of Anthony Davis. You're just cross your fingers for that. But it is still Anthony Davis. This is still a guy who has been the defensive player of the year conversations multiple years. There was a point in time when people were saying Anthony Davis was the best player in the NBA. I thought that was crazy. But at his peak, AD is without question a top 5 player in the NBA. No question about it. Question is, can he get to that peak again? We'll see. But the Lakers are not in the position the Rockets were a year ago with John Wall. Rockets were a bad team, a lot of young players. They want to see what they got in these young players. It's not the case with the Lakers. You do not want, you send Westbrook home, it's bad press for Russ, so you can't trade him, or it's harder to trade him. It's bad for the Lakers because the Westbrook story will still be hanging in the balance. Okay, what you got to do if you're the Los Angeles Lakers? You either try to trade him. That's the preferred. The best case scenario for the Lakers, you're hearing the rumors about if they could get Miles Turner and Buddy Hield for Russell Westbrook from the Indiana Pacers. I think they're going to have to chip in some first-round picks and maybe like a role player or something in order to get a guy or 2 guys like Hield and like Miles Turner. I don't think the Pacers would do that trade. I think they will look for team, because we all feel like Hield, Miles Turner, they'll probably be gone by the deadline. Probably. That's our guess. They just traded Domantas Sabonis last offseason. Okay. So shipping those guys off to the best trade package there is. We keep forgetting when we talk about these trades, will it happen? Will it not happen? It's got to work for both teams. Would a Westbrook plus a first-round pick, 2 first-round picks work for the Lakers in exchange for Miles Turner and Buddy Hield? Absolutely it would. But it doesn't really work for the Pacers because you're getting one of the most expensive players in the league for 1 year. You get 2 first-round picks, cool, but no role players. You're not really getting any veterans. They're going to try and help build the culture in Indiana. Indiana usually rebuilds pretty quickly. It's a pretty well-run franchise, right? It's not really a win for the Pacers. But you at least attempt it if you're the Lakers. If it's not with the Pacers, it's with somebody else. And if not, you buy them out. Just get rid of the problem. Don't have it sitting around like a hair in a biscuit. Just look at a team like the San Francisco 49ers, switching to the NFL for a little bit. And Richard Sherman was talking about this last night on the Thursday Night Football pregame show on Amazon. He was talking about this has got to be one of the most awkward situations in the NFL. Jimmy G knows he's not going to be the starter anymore. The Niners can't really find a trade partner to trade him out of San Francisco so they can go with Trey Lance full-time, all while he's still technically a 49er. Like, it's kind of a weird story that's sort of hanging over the Niners, like Jimmy G's still in the building. In case Trey Lance maybe doesn't pan out, you can always go back to Jimmy. Like, it's not something you want to be hanging around for a long time. Same thing for Westbrook. Okay. He has been a nuisance, to say the least, to this franchise. It's one of the biggest mistake, if not the biggest mistake that LeBron has ever made. is a guy who has as much control as any player's ever had. LeBron's made some great moves. This is probably one of the worst he's ever made. Okay. It's been a disaster. Get him out of the building. I should say, get him out of the franchise. You trade him. If you can't do that, you buy him out. You eat was it $47 million that Westbrook's going to make this year? You eat the $47 million. You don't want this hanging over the Lakers. You don't. So sending him home, comparing it to the John Wall situation, Houston, totally different. So I don't think this would be a good move at all to send Westbrook home at all. Grady, sort of going back. Grady and I were talking about this earlier. He commented, "It's Pat Bev's league now. Deal with it, bro." You know why? Because he's a Laker instead of a Clipper now. Hey, the Lakers got the biggest cheerleader in the league. Listen, I don't agree with Russell Westbrook much on anything, but one of the things I like totally, like my favorite Russell Westbrook quote ever, and he's had some bad press conferences, but probably my favorite Westbrook quote ever was from 3 years ago when he was in Houston with the Rockets, and they had just played the Clippers. Patrick Beverley was on the Clippers, and Russell Westbrook, I remember he had a really big game. He had a big scoring night. And that was at that point when people were really starting to talk about Patrick Beverley, like, hey, man, is he the best point guard defender in the NBA? And Russell Westbrook said after the game, he said, Pat Bev fool y'all, man. It's Pat Bev's he's a good defender. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say like Patrick Beverley is not a good defender. He is. He's a decent defender. But, you know, he more than anything, he's there to just be a flat out pest. That is his job. He's a good defender. He's just there to pester the living crap out of the other side. That's his job. So, I mean, that's why I think it helps the Lakers, because I don't think they had anybody else that would do that. But, you know, the thing that Grady is alluding to, though, saying it's Patrick Beverley's league now, is I told the story in yesterday's show that Pat Bev, it was actually the very first game at the Chase Center in San Francisco, and in a game where the Clippers absolutely just destroyed my Warriors, he went up to Steph Curry at one point in the game. This was after the Warriors had just went to 5 straight finals, and this was not going to be a good year. Clay was hurt. Iguodala got traded. KD left. We knew it was going to be a pretty bad year for the Warriors. And Pat Bev walked up to Steph. He said, the last 5 years were yours. These next 5 years are mine. And Steph reportedly turned him and said, quote, aren't you 31, bro? You know, and so I guess so it's been 3 years. So Pat Bev's got 2 years left of this being his league, I guess. 2 years left. It's his league. It's Patrick Beverley's league. But I do think, to go back to the original point, though, sending Westbrook home, I think, would be the absolute worst thing the Lakers could do. Buy him out or trade him. Preferably trade him, because you like to get something in return for him. But if you can't, just get him out of the building, eat the $47 million, and move about your way. Just move on to the next problem, because the Lakers got a lot of problems. Westbrook's one of them. You can get out of this. Trade or buy out. Don't send him home. This is not John Wall in Houston at all. It's a false equivalency, in my humble opinion. Let's move on to, let's move on to the preseason. We had a couple preseason games last night. You have the Texans beating the 49ers. You had the Chiefs beating the Packers, and got 4 games tonight. We got Bills, Panthers, Chargers, Saints, Seahawks, Cowboys, and Patriots, Raiders. So, and we'll see how many starters play in some of those games. Again, the biggest, I think we'd all agree, the biggest preseason game in 2022 is going to be Bucks versus Colts tomorrow night at 7:30 Eastern, because Tom Brady's going to play. Now, how long is he going to play? Is it a couple drives? We'll see, but we know about the 2-year sort of sabbatical hiatus type situation. So he's going to play tomorrow night in Indianapolis before the Bucks play in week 1 at Dallas. So, you know, definitely be looking out for that. And also, actually, this preseason game is actually more important. Washington Commanders, Baltimore Ravens. We know about the Ravens winning streak. Is it 22 straight? Is it 22 straight preseason wins? 21, 22, something like that. So they'll look to extend it. This is something that they genuinely care about in Baltimore. I think fans care about it. I think the franchise cares about it. So we'll see if whether or not that they can extend that streak onto, I guess, 23 straight wins over Washington. 23 straight preseason wins. That'd be pretty darn impressive. But let's talk about a team that actually happens to be in the Ravens division, a team that the Ravens have a pretty bitter rivalry with, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are a little bit of a situation in regards to what they're going to do at the quarterback position. Is it Mitch Trubisky? Is it Kenny Pickett? It is not Mason Rudolph. The fact that Mason Rudolph was even brought up in this discussion is ridiculous. Mason Rudolph is a backup quarterback, and that is what Mason Rudolph is. He is a backup quarterback. Mitch Trubisky is in that group. You hear me say it all the time. Low-end starter, high-end backup. Kenny Pickett is a rookie that they drafted in the first round out of the University of Pittsburgh. So he's a hometown guy. The Pittsburgh Panthers, the college football program, their facility is very close to the Pittsburgh Steelers facility. So that's a big reason that the Steelers did take Pickett. It's because obviously you do have a hole at the quarterback position with the last few years, Big Ben might as well have been a backup quarterback with how he was playing. But then he ends up retiring. You bring a young quarterback in. There's a quarterback that Kenny Pickett is reminding me of thus far in the preseason. But before I even tell you who that is, in his first 2 preseason games that he has played, he's looked pretty darn good. His first game against the Seattle Seahawks, 13 for 15, 95 yards, 2 touchdowns, a passer rating of 132. So, pass rating well over 100, okay? His second preseason game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, he's 6 for 7, 76 yards, 1 touchdown, and a close to perfect passer rating, 151. Now, I know y'all going to come at me. I know it's the preseason. I know it's against second and third stringers. I totally get that, and I understand that. And you can't totally judge a player just off the preseason. But the quarterback, just talking about this preseason and given sort of some of his strengths as a quarterback that he's reminding me of a little bit, is a guy whose hat I'm wearing right now, Dak Prescott. Remember Dak in 2016? At the time, we had no clue that he was going to start that year for the Cowboys. We thought it's Tony Romo, but Romo predictably got hurt in the preseason, and we all know the story from there. But Dak's first 3 preseason games against the Rams, Dolphins, and Seahawks, he was accurate, showed a little bit of good arm. He's moving around. I remember him running for a touchdown in one of the preseason games. Okay, he seems to have a really good command of the offense. He's working well with the starters. Like timeout. Like Dallas may have some here. And turns out they had found their franchise quarterback post Tony Romo. I think you're seeing the same thing for Kenny Pickett. Because similar to Dak, if Kenny Pickett had come out last year, 2021 draft, given the number of tremendous quarterback talent coming out of college, led by Trevor Lawrence, on from there, Kenny Pickett probably would have been a 3rd or 4th round pick. Likewise, Dak, had he come out after his junior year as opposed to playing his senior year at Mississippi State, he probably would have been about a 5th or 6th round pick. Instead, he was projected to be a 2nd round pick in 2016, but he had a DUI, which cost him a little bit, and he slipped all the way to the 4th round. But both guys kind of had to play to their senior year just to get in the NFL, right? Their talent didn't just blow you away, but they had very good arms, very mobile. Kenny Pickett might be more mobile than Dak was, and Dak was almost better known for his running at Mississippi State than his arm. We know Kenny Pickett can move. They seem to be confident, in command of the offense. Now, the only difference is Dak came into a team that had the best offensive line in football. Kenny Pickett's has one of the worst. Okay, the Steelers' offensive line is not very good. So, but here's the thing we know about Pittsburgh. They draft as well as anybody in the league. They draft offensive linemen well. They have a solid amount of cap space. It's not great, but a decent amount of cap space. We know they're paying Minkah Fitzpatrick big money and on down from there. But they draft receivers better than probably anybody. I'm telling y'all, this George Pickens out of the University of Georgia, I saw him play live in college. He was incredible. I'm telling y'all, the injuries cost him a little bit in college in terms of instead of being a 1st round pick, he was a 2nd round pick. This kid has the potential to be special. And given how receivers usually pan out in Pittsburgh, he's got a chance to be really special. Pittsburgh drafts well. It's Mike Tomlin. It's the Rooney family. I was about to say it's Heinz Field, but it's not that anymore. It's Acrisure Stadium, Acrisure Field, something like that. It sounds terrible. But point is, He's in a well-run franchise. He's got weapons. He's got a very good running back in Najee Harris, who had a great rookie season last year. Offensive line isn't great, but you can improve that. Remember, Justin Herbert had a bad offensive line in Los Angeles. They improved it in like one offseason. Pittsburgh can do that. I think you start in week 1. I really do. Because you see the confidence. You see the fact that being under pressure, things of that nature, doesn't face him. And look, right off the bat, he's got to play Cincinnati and New England. That is 2 very, very good defenses. People said, I've heard a lot of people say, we'll start Trubisky so Trubisky takes the hits. Okay. I mean, you're just throwing out a guy just to take hits for the rookie. Okay, fine. But is it going to make your franchise any better? At the end of the day, the guys in that locker room, they know who can play and who can't play. And both guys can play, but they understand who gives us the best chance to win games. And I'm not sure Mitch Trubisky is the type of dude that can instill that type of confidence, especially in a locker room in Pittsburgh that's still got quite a few veterans, led by primarily Cam Hayward. I think you start Pickett week 1. You got Cincinnati. You got a home game against Pittsburgh. You've got Cleveland, who's got a great defensive line. The Jets, Buffalo, Tampa, Miami. You followed by Philly, the Saints, Bengals, Colts, Falcons, followed by the Ravens, Panthers, Raiders, Ravens, and Browns. Majority of those defenses have tremendous defensive lines. You're going to have to put him out there at some point. Remember, he's not a Trey Lance rookie. He's not 2021. He's 24 years old. I think he was in college at Pittsburgh. I think, he was there for 5 years basically. Like he's ready to go. It's very similar to Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow was in college for 5 years. He was Ohio State for I think it was 3 years, and he was at LSU for 2. Like Joe Burrow was more NFL ready than some of the young rookies that came in. I think you start Kenny Pickett week 1. I really do. John said, "Here you go again, LOL." I assume John is referring to my reference of Ray and Dakota Prescott. Listen, that's my quarterback. My quarterback is the only reason I even root for the Dallas Cowboys. I've said multiple times, Dak leaves, I leave with him. If he goes to the Jacksonville Jaguars, I'm going to have to bite the bullet and root for the Jaguars, I guess. But yeah, listen, obviously Dak's my favorite quarterback up there with guys like Russell and Brady and Mahomes. I love Carr, Lamar Jackson. Like those are kind of my guys. But listen, I got to stay with my quarterback always. But last topic of the day, the end of preseason means we're seeing the end of joint practices, and that's probably a good thing because we've seen a lot of fights during training camp, which, listen, man, you get it. It's guys hitting each other for hours in a row under the scorching sun. This summer, folks, has been ridiculously hot. So you got to realize pads, other massive men hitting you constantly, eventually emotions are going to boil over, okay? But we probably saw the biggest brawl, without question, this weekend between the Bengals and the Rams. Ironically, the 2 teams that we last saw play a real NFL game in the Super Bowl. The 2 teams, there was the video of them fighting. And the one thing that stood out without question was Aaron Donald, who I said in the show, and a lot of people agree is the best defensive player. I'm sorry, obviously the best defensive player. I think is the best player, period, in the NFL. But the video shows him holding not 1, but 2 Cincinnati Bengals helmets. You see the orange helmet with the black stripes, and he's whacking guys with it. So I guess he ripped 2 Bengals helmets, 2 Bengals players' helmets off and just starts swinging. And there's some like freeze frames of even some Rams teammates who are, in the middle of this brawl, and they're like looking at Aaron Donald like stunned, like, bro, I'd get out of the way. Like, we know how strong of a man that Aaron Donald is, and you give him 2 pretty good-sized helmets just swinging around. And a lot of people have sort of used this as a comparison to Myles Garrett. Remember a few years ago, Myles Garrett at the end of the game waxed Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph did not have a helmet on. He hit Mason Rudolph in the head. He got 6-game suspension. People compared it to that. Here's the difference, though. And people have been saying, does Aaron Donald get suspended? If he were, which I don't think he will, I'm going to give it a 0% chance of happening, and here's why. If that kind of thing happened in a NFL game, that is the commissioner's decision. That is the NFL's decision whether or not to suspend him or fine him. If it happens in practice, as the NFL details thoroughly, And very clearly in their rules, if something happens in practice, it is up to the team to suspend or to fine a player. So my guess is what happens, Aaron Donald gets hit with a fine. The Rams are, because this is the Rams' decision. The NFL has nothing to do with this. They can't make this decision whether to suspend or fine. The Rams are not going to suspend him for the opening game of the NFL season, defending champs at home against the Buffalo Bills. Now, does it excuse Aaron Donald's actions? No, absolutely not. Like, you don't just run around hitting guys with a helmet or two helmets, especially when you're a man of that stature and that kind of strength. Okay, but you can't. If the Rams feel it necessary to suspend him, that's their decision. Listen, man, I don't love a guy like that, of that size, whacking around helmets. Anybody, especially if it were a 5'9" wide receiver, if it were Julian Edelman doing that, I wouldn't be okay with it, especially Aaron Donald. But to me, there has to be discipline, but to me, it goes no further than a fine. The Rams are not going to suspend him for their opening game, the opening game of the NFL season. So, yeah. Man, I'd say these brawls, there was a big one between the Panthers and the Patriots that I think they said Christian McCaffrey started, which I'm like, dude, Christian McCaffrey's what, 5'10"? And he's out here starting brawls? Like, gee whiz. But, hey, listen, I guess at the end of the day, it's the hot, scorching sun in training camp. You got these big, heavy pads on, against very large men. Okay, as I've always said, at football, especially in the trenches, offensive line, defensive line, your job is to move another grown man against his will. That is football in the trenches. We know that's not the case necessarily with receivers and corners and things of that nature. But to me, it goes no further than a fine for Aaron Donald. And even if the NFL wanted to suspend him, they can't. That's not their decision to make because it happened in practice. Grady, going back to the whole Buddy Hield, Miles Turner trade scenario possibility. He says, quote, is Buddy Hield and Miles Turner a realistic trade for the Lakers? Would you throw in Kendrick Nunn and 2 first-round picks and WB? I'm fuzzy on who WB is. I probably should know who you're talking about. Westbrook. WB Westbrook. I'm sorry. Would you throw in Kendrick Nunn with Westbrook and 2 first-round picks to make it happen? Yeah, I would. I mean, Kendrick Nunn didn't play last year due to injury, but it wasn't like he was making a huge impact for the Miami Heat. He had a nice rookie season, and then once they got to the bubble, remember the Heat got to the finals that year in the bubble, Kendrick Nunn was having like a rookie of the year caliber season, and he completely fell off and hasn't really been the same since. So what I do if I were the Lakers, 100%. You get a great shooter in Hield, and you get maybe the best shot blocker in basketball, Miles Turner. I mean, this dude blocks like 3 shots a game, and he's a threat on the offensive end. He can shoot the 3, and he can score down low. He's everything you really want in a center. And Grady says, if not, what is a realistic trade for the LA Lakers to rid themselves of Westbrook? I mean, if you're talking about with the Pacers, that's probably the deal. Question is, do the Pacers take it? I mean, if I'm the Pacers, I'm probably asking for another role player because we know the Lakers don't have a whole lot of picks. So the Lakers give up their 2 first-rounders. Obviously, Westbrook, Kendrick Nunn, and probably another role player from there. I've suggested on this show Charlotte's a possibility. Do you trade like Westbrook, the 2 first-round picks for a guy like Terry Rozier? Now, Terry is not a very good defender, but he's a shot maker. He's a good shooter. I think he played well with LeBron. He doesn't have to play on the ball. Remember, he's played with Lonzo Ball for the last couple of years, so he's sort of used to that style of play, not being a ball-dominant guard like Westbrook is, certainly being a better shooter than Westbrook is. I've suggested that. Terry Rozier in exchange for Westbrook, a first-round pick. Like I think that's a possibility. And we know, Michael Jordan loves to sell tickets in Charlotte. Russell Westbrook is a Jordan brand athlete, so I think it is something that is at least worth talking about, but we'll see. But I don't think – I've said for about a month, I don't think Westbrook is going to be on the Lakers roster come the trade deadline. Now, after the Patrick Beverley trade and the reports that have come out since, I'm probably – at this rate, I'm more sure than not. I'm probably 70-30 that Russell Westbrook will not be a Laker, at least will not be on the Lakers in the Lakers lineup for opening night against my Warriors. Like looks like it's the way it's shaking out, but we'll see. All right, that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by as always. Be sure to catch Carving It Up Live on Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern, at 3 p.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. Also, be sure to go check out the Carving It Up podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and Anchor, as well as wherever you listen to your podcast. Be sure to also like, share, comment, and most importantly, hit that big red subscribe button. We're starting to slowly, build the subscriber total. We really appreciate that. All the incredible supporters and viewers and listeners of the show. We really, really appreciate y'all. But let's keep that count going up. It takes you literally like 2 seconds. There. That's how long it takes to hit the subscribe, big red subscribe button. So do that. Hit the subscribe button. But have a great weekend, everybody. Last week of the preseason, last weekend without college football. Thank God. It is upon us, folks. We're in the last few days, the last week of the month of August, and that means in September, it is nothing. And I mean nothing but football. And that's what I know we're all excited about. So have a great weekend, everybody. Continue to stay safe out there. God bless you all. Peace out. Dubs are still the champs, though. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. Be sure to click that big red subscribe button and go check out the other clips and full shows of Carving It Up Live. Have a blessed day.